Again, so officially, welcome, folks. Welcome to the Fully Remote Talk Show, the only show for leaders adapting their style to a remote first world. And we are on episode 15, and today we are talking about time management for remote teams. As I just was thinking about it, like I am busy, or I'm just crazy busy, or I'm hectic is so the badge of honor that we keep wearing when it comes to how we think about like work. There was a time when like people were starting to talk about like work-life balance, but those were all at a time when like work was a defined place that happened within a defined time. But thanks to remote work and work life is or work or our personal time is not just a balance as much as it's like now blended to the point where like we don't know where work starts, we don't know where your personal time begins, and that is the world that we are now leading. And there's just so many questions. How can we be productive as leaders? How can I work with a team and make sure that the team is productive? Lots of questions. Thankfully, we have an expert among us, and I'm like excited to have Elizabeth over here up on stage. And welcome to the show, Elizabeth. For
Thank
those
you.
who don't,
Happy to be here.
yep, for those who don't know Elizabeth, she is an author, a coach, and uh, she's written several articles and a speaker about like everything from time management, productivity, flexible work schedules, and she's talked and written about like a lot of these things. She guides people to make the best use of their time in their coaching practice. I like that she's written 3 books. One of them is literally Invest Your Time Like Money, which I love it because that's a, like, you know, it truly is that, right? Like you need to think about time as money. Several articles that are super interesting in the Harvard Business Review and the Forbes magazine for covering everything from productivity, managing time, how to be uh, effective in what you're doing. Elizabeth, truly excited to talk to you today. Welcome again to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So I want to jump into questions, but before I do that, we do this all the time where we actually check in with the rest of the folks over here. So we ask one question and have you type your answer. Again, the idea for us is to like check in, think about this one moment, reflect on where you are today, and then type your word or a phrase in that box. And in a few seconds, we will see what everybody's thought. If you could acquire any superpower, which one would you want? Again, go ahead and type your answer in that box over there so we can see what everybody's typed and what superpowers do we truly get. I'm going to give another 10, 15 seconds so everybody can type that. All right, time to see what it is over here. Fly, look at that. Fly is literally like the biggest bucket over there. See the future, incredible strength in slow time. Ooh, that is interesting. Time travel, I see a lot of time related things going on over here. Hyper focus. Wow. Okay. I really hope we all don't think of those as superpowers, but maybe we could like get to do them a little bit in our lifetime. So awesome, folks! This is great. Welcome again to the show, and we are excited to go into like an interview mode over here. And Elizabeth, I'm going to start off with a question. I mean, this you have obviously been coaching a ton of people with time management productivity. Tell me about in this work from home world, in this remote work, what are some of the top things that people are struggling with? Where are they? And in some sense, I'm asking this because sort of misery loves company to know that like, oh, there's a lot of people having the same problem as we do. So I'd love to know about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, going remote work, particularly in 2020 when it was not planned or expected, and also a lot of people had their kids home with them at the same time, unexpectedly, was extremely challenging for people. The vast majority of workers in the United States, knowledge workers, had never worked remotely, and for sure weren't working remotely full time. So, this was a huge change for a lot of people. I think some of the biggest challenges that I saw were not having a consistent schedule. So they were used to like commuting in at a certain time, taking a train or bus or driving, needing to show up at a certain time for not being embarrassed with their boss or their coworkers because people could see you there. And then having a certain time, usually not everyone, but a lot of people when you left to go home, have dinner, pick up your kids, pick up your dog, be with your family, whatever you decided to do. And so a lot of people lost that natural structure of even when they were going to start and when they were going to end their work. And so, along with that, with losing that structure, a lot of other structures started to fall apart. So, a lot of people then struggled with going to bed on time because, like,
Mm.
okay, well, if I don't have to get up for that train, or like, no one will really know kind of if I'm at my desk or not. So, like, I don't really have to get up on time. So, there's a lot of people that ended up with much later sleep cycles and waking up later and all of that. And then some of the other things that I saw were big struggles with focus because all of
Mm.
a sudden you see the dishes and you see that, like, project you could work on in the living room, and you're especially when there was all the remote schooling, like your kids are home and they're like asking you things or want to play with you or don't understand how to do their schoolwork or whatever that is. So massive increase in distractions. And then the thing that I feel like I'm seeing more, and why I think many people do want to go at least hybrid, is actually the impact of just loneliness. So missing
Mm.
being with colleagues, or being like, even if you aren't BFFs with your colleagues, just like having someone to say hi to or ask how your weekend was, or get a cup of coffee or go to lunch sometime. And so I actually think that psychological health part of it, as this has gone on for over 2 years in terms of more people working remotely, is kind of one of the most challenging things for productivity right now. And I do see many of my clients or people I work with, as they're able to, and the space opens up, that they have started to go to the office a couple times a week. Not even so much that they're a lot more productive at the office, although some of them are much more productive being in that space, but more for like mental health reasons. They're just a lot happier and they feel better with their job. So, um, yes, people are still fully remote, and I know that's what we're talking about on this talk show, but I'm just letting you know that
Yeah.
it seems like the psychological impact on people is getting more heavy after a couple years, and they're ready to like find ways to connect with people.
This is awesome. This is super insightful. I mean, like first up with like the yeah, before I go on that, like I think I hear a little bit of static. I don't know if it's your microphone or like something in the environment over there, but if it is, if I'm only the one who's listening to it, hearing that, that's okay. But like I just wanted to make sure that the recording as good. Uh, the but this is great, like to know that like the schedule, like the sleep focus and the big factor of loneliness, I think these are like super um, important things that is on top of mind for a lot of people right now. And I'm kind of eager to know a little bit more about like the answers or like the solutions around this. But before we get there, like the other big part about like as a company or as an organization or as just in general, like productivity levels, like we see like a lot of research saying that like productivity levels have really not dropped, or like they've dropped a little bit or not. It's something over there. What do you see over here? Like, do people feel more productive? Do leaders feel that the productivity has not dropped, or what is your take on that?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the person, in terms of their personality type, their ability to handle flexibility, and also their particular role or responsibility and the environment that they're in. So I would say for some people, their productivity didn't drop and they are able to be very self disciplined and focused. And they've also enjoyed doing things like when they don't have their commute, having more time to exercise or more time with their dog, or more family dinners. So there's definitely people that have been as productive or more, not going into the office. And that's largely kind of a personality as well as skills building. So a lot of the people that come to me maybe aren't as used to working remotely. And so they didn't have as much of those skills or like personal discipline to be as effective at home. So there's some people in that situation where they're much more externally driven, who their productivity has gone down significantly
Mm,
since they were working remotely. A lot of it is due to the distractions, not having the structure of having to show up at a certain time, not having people that are watching you. Not that you want to be micromanaged, but when you're in the office and there's people all around you, you're just not going to scroll on your phone for an hour. It's just not going to happen because
right.
it's embarrassing. Versus at home, no one can see you. So that's something that can happen there. So that's something there. And then also, one of the things that the research has shown, and I think I've seen too, it also depends like how comfortable you are and familiar with your job. So many
Mm,
people that are more like mid-career or more advanced career, they've been doing their job a long time, they're connected, they're comfortable in what they're doing, they're clear on what they're doing, they're like, awesome, I can get a whole bunch done. Versus people that are maybe like just starting out, need more mentorship and direction, aren't really sure what they're supposed to be doing, don't have really strong connections with people. I think their productivity suffered a lot more in terms of just honestly being motivated to work or even knowing what they should be doing. So I really think it's been a mixed bag. Yes, some people
got
have
it.
become more productive, some people it's maybe the same, some people it decreased. And also there's the whole case of how many hours they're working. So if the productivity is the
Mm.
same, but they're working additional hours, then it's not actually a higher level of productivity because per hour it's reduced.
That's a great point. I feel like, yeah, so there is a spectrum and a personality type, or like your sort of your self motivation and everything plays a big factor over here. That's good to know. Sort of double clicking on one of the first points that you mentioned over there with regards to the big problem, right? Like you mentioned this when we initially spoke, like flexibility is not always a good thing. I mean, just tell me a little bit more about that, and like how like the blending of like work and personal time has changed things for people, and like also just give us a little bit on how do you defend against it.
Yeah, for sure. So it is nice to have some flexibility. I mean, deciding to take your dog on the walk at lunch or something, that's great. Yeah, or picking up your kids after school. Like, so some flexibility is nice. But flexibility actually means you need to make much more decisions in your day and that you need to have much more self control or self discipline. So if you just know, I always need to take this train, I always need to be at the office by this time, there's a whole bunch of decisions you don't need to make. The same with like, when are you coming home from work? The same of, am I going to do this house project or I'm going to do something with work at this time? Like, those decisions are all made for you when you go into the office versus when you're remote. And then you just don't need as much self-discipline. Like I said, if you're going to get in trouble if you arrive late at work, there's a much higher likelihood you're going to show up. If like it would be awkward to see people that see you on your phone all the time, you're probably not going to be on your phone. So being remote and having that flexibility, it requires a much higher level of skills. So it can be
Mm,
wonderful if you have the skills to manage that well. If you don't, then you need to, find that support through some kind of environment with people or start setting more rules for yourself. So for example, prior to being a time management coach, I had a business where I did writing, editing, and photo styling for a bunch of different magazines. Um, and what I saw there was that when I had no sense of order when I was starting and stopping work, I just always felt like I should be working. So working at night, working
mm,
on the weekends. And so for me, with working remotely, which I have done for 17 years now, what has really worked well and gotten me to a place of balance is setting boundaries. So starting between
mm.
about 8:45 and 9, looking to wrap up by about 5:30 or 6, and like having that structure for myself and reducing the amount of flexibility I give myself has really helped with having that work life balance and not feeling like everything's mushed together all the time.
This is super insightful. I think the big aha moment for me is that like how much like the structure or the environment that was defining when you go to work, when you take the train and everything, was giving the like the productivity cues for us to like be doing these things. And now in a flexible work environment, like you have to like balance that out by upskilling yourself, and that's actually like a really insightful moment for me, in that like you need to be a lot more disciplined, a lot more structured there. uh, Super insightful. Again, I'm gonna jump to a quick activity. This is something that we typically do in one of the shows, and in this one going to ask this question to you again. Like this is a very contrived situation, but and the idea is that like people who are over here in the audience would love to also answer this. But before you go ahead and like click on this, Elizabeth, I would like to know what would your preference be, and also zoom out and think about, hey, what is something that might be good for somebody in the long run on something like this? So would you rather have a, sorry, I should have said full day off, or 2 hours off every day for a week? I would love to know everybody's preference on this. So go ahead and like click on it and vote on it so we can see everybody's preference. But Elizabeth, what do you think? You can talk out loud on this.
Yeah. So I just voted for the full day off. And the reason for that is I feel like 2 hours off every day for a week can be really nice, but I feel like you can actually do something entirely different with that day if you want to, versus like if you just have 2 hours, maybe you can fit in an errand or some other like doctor's appointment you have or something, but you couldn't like, I don't know, drive an hour and a half to your best friend's house and spend the day with them or go to the beach or anything like that. So I'd rather have a full day off. And that's actually one of the reasons why in my own schedule on Wednesdays, I don't book coaching calls, and that's giving myself a full day. It's not that I'm not working, but it's a day to like write newsletters, write articles, work on finances, really have a full day to get other stuff done that is just hard to do when you just have chunks of smaller amounts of time.
Awesome. No, I thought this would be like a question where we would see like some 50-50, but it looks like there's like 100% people thinking that like would rather
Yeah.
have a full day off. This is a revelation. I chose the full day off as well, but I thought there would at least be some people in the 2 hours every day camp. But looks like we're all in consensus over here. Okay, so the next question over here, maybe hopefully this one's like a tougher one. Which would bother you more, as a day in which you had a lot of meetings that were not relevant to you, or you spent the whole day planning a meeting that was then canceled? Again, I want to get everybody's thoughts over here. But Elizabeth, like, what would be your thoughts over here? Again, like, to just paraphrase, this is like a day of wasted time versus a day of wasted effort in some ways. And how which one bothers you more?
It would definitely be the irrelevant meetings because they shouldn't be on my schedule versus planning a meeting that was canceled. There's probably still good work and it's going to get rescheduled and it should happen. So I don't like wasting time. And one of the things that I talk to clients about a lot is cutting meetings that aren't relevant or most important. So to me, that would really be wasted time versus the prep could be used later.
Got it. Okay. So it almost seems like, yeah, because time and effort are like sometimes like looked at as like sort of two sides of the same coin. But in this case, it seems like the wasted time could have been avoided very clearly. And so I think that's probably where you're like leaning that. This is great. I mean, I like that like this one at least had like a little bit of split over here in terms of what people think on that as well. But this is, I'm going to jump back to like sort of the Q&A mode. And again, like folks, if any of you had any questions or thoughts, or even on these things that like we've already talked about, feel free to raise your hand, come up on stage and like talk about it. You can ask a question or make a comment, all fair game. If you have a sensitive question to ask, you can ask that anonymously by like checking off that box. Like you can totally do that. I'm going to shift gears and talk more about, as a leader or as a company, if I were to like, if I have a whole team, how would you help the team be more productive? Specifically, like around like offering them the flexibility, but like also having that accountability part of it, and like how can you do that, and how can you do that well?
Yeah. So, I mean, it obviously depends on what team you have and what you're looking to accomplish. But um, I think there's a few key things. So one is you should be very clear on what our goals for the week or for the month. Um, so even if people are working slightly different hours, they're still hitting the key deliverables. So what I've seen with people having a lot of flexibility and working from home, there is less accountability and people can end up working a lot less than 8 hours a day. So um, you want to make sure people are hitting goals to have focus. If you at least have those clear benchmarks, that's going to be a really key thing for success. Some remote teams, like particularly if you're in IT, might do daily stand-up meetings. That might make sense for you, where you do something at 9:30 or 10, um, and maybe have some kind of checkout at the end of the day. So that can be a way to just make sure people are alive and aware of what's going on. And then at the end of the day, there's the touch base there. Some of my coaching clients have gone so far as to have a daily list that they send to their boss or share with their team of, this is what I plan for the next day, and this is what I've done yesterday. So they have those kind of updates. So those are a few things that you can do, and I think the really important thing is that you're laser sharp clear as a leader on what are the highest value activities that you want to be delivered, and then you're measuring
Mm.
against those metrics. So like if you run a sales team, how many sales calls are they making? How many are they closing? Like what does that look like? That's going to be the relevant metrics, even if the number of the hours they work is slightly different. It's not as important. If you're working in development, like are they hitting the goals during the sprint? Like do they have the deliverables that need to get done? That's what's going to be most important. Um, so basically, I would really focus on results, but at the same time, be aware and cognizant of like how many hours people are putting in, because I just find with working remotely that those aren't always very clear. So,
Yeah. No, it's a good point about like having some goals or something more tangible that like people are working towards, rather than like just the fact that they're showing up is like
mm,
because there's no showing up anymore. This is good. I have a question that somebody has posted over here, a couple of anonymous questions. Um, I like this one. How important is prioritization to time management?
mhm. um, Absolutely essential. I would say one of the most important things. So I've written 3 books, and my first book is called The 3 Secrets to Effective Time Investment. And the first section is on clarify action based priorities. So
Mm,
basically, right from the beginning, we want to think about priorities because you cannot do everything, especially with everything that's been happening with technology. I've been a time management coach over 13 years, and so when I first started, there weren't even smartphones, like let alone all these apps and all these different like social media things and technologies that we have that are so distracting, didn't like literally didn't even exist. And so we get more and more and more things coming into our life. And so you have to be able to prioritize and shut things out and decide what you will or won't pay attention to. So that's absolutely essential. And why I say this section is on clarify action based priorities is that with things that are a priority, you want to translate it into an action that you'll do. So, for example, let's say wellness is a priority to you. Well, wellness is not actually something you can put in your calendar, but you could translate it into going grocery shopping, or you could translate it
mm,
into going to the gym 3 times a week from 5 to 6 p.m. and put that in your calendar. So, prioritization is absolutely critical to end up in the right place. And you really want to assert your own priorities with your time so you end up being aligned with your values.
great. There's the other question around what has been the top habit or area for someone to work to improve on for good time management or productivity after switching to remote? This is kind of, I mean, we have a question. Would be great to hear your answer right now, but like
Mhm.
we should like probably get the top three of this as well.
Yeah, for sure. So you want the top three instead of
Yeah,
one? Is that right? Okay. Um, let's see here. So I would say number one is establishing structure. So deciding when you're going to start work, when you'd like to end work. Yes, you might stop to pick up your kids, or you might put in a few hours later, but even if you're putting a few hours later in the evening, I always recommend my clients structure it. So they say, okay, yes, I'm going to get up back on my computer later, but it's going to be from 8 to 9 o'clock, and I'm working on this one report. That's very clear. It makes it not stressful versus if you just say, oh, yeah, sometime after dinner, I'm going to get some more work done. Then all evening you're thinking about it. You probably don't get on your computer till 10, and then you stay up till late, and you probably do some things that aren't even important, and it's just a hot mess. So, number one, I would say is structure. Number two, I would say is focus and eliminating distraction. So, figuring out where in your home you can be, or wherever you're working remotely, so that you are shutting out distraction from like personal activities that need to get done, shutting out distraction from your phone or different things on your computer, any of that. So that's like another really critical thing. It is important in the office, but even more important outside of the office because you have lower accountability. And then the third thing in terms of time management and productivity with being remote is just learning how to reach out to colleagues and communicate when you're remote. Because what I found was that some people who would have easily just turned to the colleague next to them or saw someone in the hallway or stopped by their boss's desk when they were all in person, once they were remote, they would just be stuck for hours, not sure what to do. And it would take them a lot more time to be like, oh, yeah, I should reach out to my boss or I should reach out to this colleague. So you have to learn like, when do I reach out? How do I reach out? How can I do that and be effective even when I'm not seeing this person face to face?
This is great. I think I love this top three list of building that structure uh, and working on your focus, which is removing distractions and like having clear communication paths for being able to talk to your colleagues when you block and when you're like not productive. Sounds fantastic. I love these things. I'm going to have one more question that I'm going to ask. This last one over here is talking about tools. Like you mentioned, like sort of calendar, and I think calendar is what like everybody thinks of when it comes to productivity. Now it's become like the productivity thing. What are like first like I want to talk about like calendar by itself and like what is sort of best practices around calendar management, and then also I'd love to like double click to say like what are some of the standard tools that people are using like now with like Slack, email, and like phone calls and everything, right? Like what is hurting, what is helping with productivity in an organization? So sort of a two-part question.
Sure. Okay, so we'll start with the calendar. So in regards to the calendar, what I recommend is that you, again, you set boundaries. So if there's certain times of the day when you don't want meetings scheduled, that you do block those out as a recurring event. So for example, one of my coaching clients I was speaking to earlier today, she likes to help take her kids to school. So she doesn't have meetings that are scheduled before 9 a.m. Or I was talking about Wednesdays are my coaching call free day. So I have as a recurring event that all of Wednesday is blocked out so that people can't schedule with me and I can work on other types of my work. So I think the first thing is you need to know what you want and what works for you. In terms of how early, how late, any sort of recurring blocks of time you want to schedule. So, for example, I usually start work between 8:45 or 9, but then I usually don't actually start coaching calls until 10. So that gives me time to answer my own email and plan my day and get some tasks done before I'm talking to people. So that's kind of the most critical thing with your calendar management. I really like using the tool called Calendly, which is syncs with your Google Calendar and allows you to set up a lot of rules. So we have rules around how early people can book, how late they can book, um, how long different meetings are. You can block different kinds of meetings. So if we're in a time where it's a really busy season and we don't have as much time for consultations, we can block just the consultation calendar for a few weeks and still have other kinds of meetings with our current coaching clients that are up there. So I love what Calendly offers in terms of managing things. And I also encourage people to just block in margin. So I sometimes have a lot more coaching calls in a day. Like today was a day with a lot of coaching calls that were stacked up. But ideally, I like about 4 hours a day of meetings. Like that's great. And then having about 4 hours a day to do other stuff. So if you're similar to me, or maybe you even like less meetings than that, then block it out. Like it's okay once you've got, 3, 4, 5 hours of meetings to just block the rest as margin and just say, okay, like I'm not available during that time because I need a breather. And giving yourself the ability to do that. And I think as much as possible as you can systematize the better. So, like, for example, my weekly planning is every Monday morning. I have wrap up time on Friday afternoon. So, really just everything that I can make recurring, I do in my calendar, and then I have a lot of boundaries around where things are. So, in terms of calendar management, that's my high level advice there. And then the second question, you were talking about what are different kinds of tools and what is helpful or not helpful. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Um, so I feel like this, so the answer to this varies depending on exactly what role you have and exactly what organization you're in. My personal philosophy and opinion is the less inboxes, the better. Um,
Mm.
so that is generally what I think is a good idea. I use my email, of course, for work, and that is the primary way that I like people to communicate with me. I tend not to text with clients unless it's some kind of emergency, like they're like, oh, I'm running late for an appointment and they just wanted to let me know. But I don't actively encourage that kind of engagement with me because it's much slower for me to text than to type. And also, it's harder to boundary. So, in the evening or on the weekends, I don't even go into my business email. So, I do not see what they write until Monday. Versus if things are coming to my phone and I don't personally have a different phone for work and personal life, I would see it and I don't want to see it. Like on a Saturday, I really don't want to interact on Monday, and I'm very happy to interact with clients in any way they want to. So I think email works for many situations. I know a lot of people text more in their work. I try to discourage that and have things more towards email. Um, I know a lot of organizations use IM. It can be helpful if you really do need real time answers in certain situations. I don't think that it should be the primary way that you communicate with people because, again, it's just harder to box. So with email, especially if you don't have any notifications, you can just wait till it's like your time to answer email. And you go in a few times, 2, 3 times a day, get through whichever ones are important, and then you can shut it out or like at least not have it in your face and then move on to something else. With IM, like things popping up and expecting you to answer right away, if you're in the middle of something that requires deep work, that's just not very effective for you. So I recommend if you do have to use IM or Slack or anything like that, at least shut that down when you really need to do focus work and then you can pull it back up later. Um, and if there's something that requires a big conversation back and forth, you probably should have a call instead of just like going on forever. So so my philosophy is the fewer things, the better. I know many organizations rely a lot on IM, many rely a lot on Slack. I'm the annoying time management coach that tells people not to answer that too much and then to put like their away message up. Um, and then in terms of other tools that can be effective for people, I'm a big believer in having a good task management or project management system. So that can look a lot of different ways for a lot of people, but people like Asana, which is a popular one. Some people really like Trello. There's so many. Notion is getting really popular, and Notion not so. So there's a lot of different task management and project management tools. Many of them are fantastic. Just pick one that you like and be consistent with that. So that can work very well. So I think a task management system is essential. I do believe in email and think that that has a place there. Slack and IM, you should know why you're using it and use it effectively instead of just randomly using it all the time, even for not urgent things. I personally think it's good to avoid texting unless it's truly something urgent, but again, it could depend on the context you're in. And again, reduce the inboxes. Like there's certain social media sites or things I don't even belong to. So it's not even possible to contact me. So I don't have another thing to check there. And then also I limit things. Like, so for example, on LinkedIn, I do have a LinkedIn profile. I'm happy to have that. But I only answer messages once or twice a week. And that's all I do. And so I have it as part of my checklist on Monday to go in, look at LinkedIn. I answer all the messages. If something came in a long time ago, I just, maybe 5 days ago, I reply back and I say, I just saw your message. I only check LinkedIn once or twice a week. If you need to reach me more promptly, you can reach me at my business email and I'll respond by the next business day. And you can do that. So I think a lot of it is just about deciding what inboxes work for you and then how you're going to choose to interact with them.
This is gold. I mean, I felt like there were like lot of really quality nuggets of information over there. The top things that come to mind, and there are several, but the top things that come to mind are about like how you treat like instant messages as like a call, a tap on the shoulder like every time, but there is probably different ways that we can think about that, and that is actually a good thing for us to like and then how that could be like detrimental to deep work. That's actually a very good point that came to mind. Yeah, all these other points are also like being pretty great, and I'm glad that we captured that over here on video. We're like out of time over here, and again, I want to obviously respect time, and given that that is what we're talking about, and I want to like thank you again. Thanks for everybody for showing up, but especially like Elizabeth for like like giving clear and like positive takeaways that we can like immediately implement in like making ourselves more productive and managing time. Appreciate it. It was great talking to you on the show.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. And again, like folks, if you had any top takeaways from the show, I know that I have many, and I don't know if I would be able to write it. Feel free to type that over there, and I'll always share that with you as well at the end of the show. Awesome, folks. That's all we had for the day, and I will see you again next week.
Okay, sounds good. Take care. Thanks for having
Thanks,
me.
Elizabeth. Have a good one.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.
All right.